Okay, well, thank you all once again for coming. Today I've got a bit of proper empirical evidence. A mango, one of the few objects that I'm talking about that I can find in Frankfurt. I made a mistake last week. I forgot to warn you that today's lecture is R-rated because I'm talking about the mango. Or what do you say auf Deutsch? FSK 18. But so I'm glad Roland didn't bring his son along, but there's a couple of dogs which will be okay. In my lectures so far, we have seen how conceiving of Lakshmi as daughter goddess enables us to make sense of the symbolic representations of her of first lotus, then rice. Next week we shall explore the final stage of her daughterhood, that is, as bride, and her terminal status as spouse goddess. Terminal because as a wife her life comes to an end and she is reborn as a daughter once more. We have seen how Lakshmi as rice is conceived of as the daughter of water, in Bastar in the personified form of Mengun, the cloud goddess, and sometimes as Irawati, the elephant goddess. We have seen too how Sita, the furrow goddess, is a reincarnated form of Lakshmi. This identifies her as the goddess of wheat and as the daughter of Bhumi, Mother Earth. I now come to the main question I want to deal with today. That is, who is Lakshmi's father? This question necessarily poses the related question of who is Sita's father, because Sita is a reincarnation. And this raises the question, furthermore, of the identity of father labour. And as we saw last week, women do a lot of the labouring, but in terms of the myth of wealth, the question is, who is the sower of the seed, which is a male activity? Who does the ploughing? And so these are the key questions for myth and ritual in all of these societies. The question of the identity of Sita's father has posed a lively debate in the literature. The classic Ramayana epic tells the story of how King Janak found her in a furrow whilst ploughing, and how he and his wife adopted her and raised her as their own. But the question is, how did she get there in the first place? And this has been the question of much academic debate. The question of the identity of Lakshmi's father has raised no such debate. For the people of Bengal, who are worshippers of Durga, another form of Parvati, and her husband Shiva, the answer is obvious, and it's here for all to see in the images created during the time of Durga Puja. Here we see that Durga, in this puja, has 4 children: Lakshmi, Saraswati, Ganesh and Kartik, who, for those with a good eye, can see them there. And in this myth it tells Shiva is not in this diagram, in the ritual, because it tells this tale of Durga coming back home to see her parents. And in the case of Bastar, we have, I shouldn't assume we should know kinship, but we have King Men's monsoon rain, that's the father, and the mother is King Mengun. Rice, Lakshmi is the daughter, and Shiva is the husband of Parvati or Durga, and his brother is Narayan, who marries first Alakshmi, millet, and secondly, rice, Lakshmi, rice, poverty, wealth. But the key thing is the story. It's not a question people pose because the surface structure of the story gives us the answer. And as I said, the surface structure of the epic makes the answer abundantly clear. Meng, the god of monsoon rain, is the father of Lakshmi. He is the loyal husband of Mengun, Queen Mengun, the goddess of rain. He accompanies Mengun to the middle world, fetches the mango that enables her to get pregnant, assists at the birth ritual, and fathers Lakshmi as she grows up and gives him away at the wedding. But these two obvious answers are also obviously different, and we see the kinship relations between them are different. The question is, why is Shiva recognised as Lakshmi's father in Bengal, which is up here, and Ming is worshipped as the father here? In other words, we're concerned here with the problem of regional variation. Up until now, we have looked at the role of natural history and how it shaped the poetic imagination of the people of central India. Now we are concerned with we're concentrated on the cultural implications of the fact that monsoon Asia divides India into a rice-producing wet easterly zone and a millet and wheat-eating dry westerly zone. We now come to the cultural implications of the geography, the cultural geography of Indian kinship, because this divides India up north-south. You have the Indo-Aryan kinship to the north, Dravidian kinship to the south, and this sort of frontier zone in the middle where Roland and I do our work. Now, familial values vary greatly in India, and these create problems for priests, poets, and writers who employ the idiom of kinship in their stories. The implication of that is that the translation of a familiar story set in the Indo-Aryan speaking north has to be considerably altered to make sense to the Dravidian speaking people of the south. In other words, translation of a story from the north to the south is not only a question of linguistic transformation, it's also a question of the translation of moral values. Different kinship systems employ different values, and the word brother or uncle means different things and have different moral values as we travel from the north to the south. I have an example of this. A Tamil playwright named told me that he discovered this when he was directing a Tamil version of a play by Vijay Tendulkar called Silence, the Court is in Question. This play, which was originally written in Tendulkar's mother tongue of Marathi, which is sort of more up here, and Tamil is down here, tells the story of a girl who falls in love with her maternal uncle, that is, her mother's brother, a form of incest in North India. The play was translated from Marathi into Tamil, but during rehearsals it became apparent that the story did not make any sense for the Tamil actors. And the reason for this is that the maternal uncle and niece are in a joking relationship in Tamil Nadu. That is to say, they can flirt. Love affairs of this kind are not only tolerated in Tamil Nadu, but marriage between a maternal uncle and a niece is possible. So the play had to be totally rewritten, or at least the line, and so the affair had to be made between the mother's sister's son, that is to say, her unmarriageable cross-cousin. So in other words, translation, when the words kinship or mother or brother are used, you've got moral translation as well as linguistic translation. Now, in India, the idea that Shiva is Lakshmi's father, Shiva is, go back again. The idea that Shiva is Lakshmi's father provokes disgust in the minds of the women and singers in Bastar. And so the idea that in Bengal, Shiva is the father of Lakshmi is that they find that abhorrent. And familial values are perhaps the greatest barrier to cross-cultural understanding. Familial values are the last bastion of ethnocentricity, of which we are all guilty. And they are one of the most difficult for us to grasp because of the culturally specific values of households we are raised in from birth appear to us as natural. And the idea that Shiva is Lakshmi's father excites disgust in Bastar, raises the question of why. So the real issue I want to address today then is, why is the question of Lakshmi's paternity such a culturally sensitive one? What is it about the cultural history and cultural geography that makes it so? I begin with the story of the mango in Lakshmi Jagar, because it introduces the mythic theme found throughout India, the belief that a childless woman, when they eat one of these, falls pregnant. The story of the mango plays a crucial role in the development of the 31,000-line epic that is Lakshmi Jagar. It is the inciting moment in the development of the drama, because Queen Mengan falls pregnant with Lakshmi after she eats a mango. This happens in Book 4 of the epic, about halfway through. And to grasp the significance of this moment, I will briefly recapitulate the story, which I have here in the form of a diagram. So Book 1 starts off with Meng and Mengin, the monsoon rain, who want to come to Earth. And so that is the coming of the monsoon rains. But Meng is unhappy because when she gets to Earth, she's childless. So she's got wealth, she's got a palace, she's got everything, but no child, and she's unhappy. Meanwhile, Parvati, oh dear, I might master these by the time I leave this place. Parvati encourages Shiva to establish the first rice farm so that the people of the world, the middle world, can survive, which he does. And so that then sets up, so Book 3 is the, Book 4 is brings the two family together. Again, women get the action going. Queen Mengan is concerned that she will have no renown because Bhagwan has not blessed her with a child. She tells Meng to go to the household of her nephew Shiva to bring a mango. This will make my name, she says. And I'm going to be talking about fame next week, and so it's a constant refrain in the epic. People always want fame and name. Once again, she goes to the hunger strike until Meng agrees. Meng sets off on a long journey, and Mengan sits in ritual penance in front of a tulsi plant. The days and weeks go by as Meng negotiates the impenetrable Vendra forest, which is with ensorcelled pathways and dense undergrowth. Meanwhile, ants crawl all over Mengan as she sits in penance. They cover her feet, then legs, and finally her whole body. Meng finally, after some time and a long distance, reaches Shiva's house, where he is greeted by Parvati and Shiva. He tells them that Mengan has sent him to ask for a mango, but they tell him that the season is over, and after all sorts of hassles, he finally gets a mango. He returns to Munchpaul. The fruit is planted near a pond. 3 years passed. They go to inspect the tree, and it's growing its first crop. And then Mengan says, "The tree has grown, O beloved. It's bearing young fruit. Our name will remain for ages. Our fame will grow. People will drink water from the well. They will sit in the shade of this mango tree and say, 'Whose pond is this? Whose mango tree is this?' It belongs to King Men. It belongs to Queen Mengan. Then they will remember our names. Our names will remain forever and ever." They return to the palace. 8 days passed, and the tree is finally grown. It bears fruit for the first time, and Mengan pleads with Meng to arrange the wedding of the mango tree. And in other words, the tree must be wedded to render it auspicious. They hold the wedding, she eats the fruit, and she falls pregnant. That's the story of the mango. Briefly. Right. And I think it's important to note that they go to great detail to separate the giving of the mango and Mengan's receiving it in space and time. And so Mengan tells Meng to go and get a mango. Shiva gives it on the condition that the issue will be reunited with Narayan. He plants a mango. The tree is married. after so many years, then she falls pregnant. So the point I want to stress is this distance in space and time between the giving of the mango and its consumption. In order to understand what is going on here, it is necessary to begin with the mango and to examine its role as food for the belly and as food for thought in the minds of people of India. Now, so far I've had great difficulty because the objects I've been talking about are lotus. I couldn't get a lotus from the palm garden. I couldn't find a rice plant anywhere. The local zoo's got no elephants. But I did have some mangoes. But to understand the Indian point of view on the mango, you need two. And not only must you smell them and taste them and eat them and watch them grow, and I think the wonderful thing about material objects is they have a universal language that transcends Hindi, transcends German, transcends English. And so what imagination did two mangoes excite in the image of the Indians? Of course, for the European male, it incites this image, which of course is absolutely the wrong one. And from the point of view of Indian, we need a fruit salad. So, you've got the idea. The mango originated in India. So it's an Indian plant. It has its origins in India, and even though it's grown throughout the world, I'm not sure where these come from, India still produces half the world's mangoes. And a unique fact about the reproduction of the mango is that they are rarely pollinated by bees. Wind, flies and butterflies and moths do the job. Mangoes can also self-pollinate because male and female reproductive organs are found in the same plant in about 75% of most varieties. Male flowers make up the remaining 25%. Botanically speaking then, the mango is a hermaphrodite or a male, not female. Not female. And it follows and poetry, as I said, follows botany and science. The mango tree should be conceived of as a groom when it is ritually married prior to the harvest of a fruit. But the question is, do the people of India conceive of the mango as a male? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. Not only does it have a masculine gender in Hindi, countless folk tales from all over India relate the story of how childless women fall pregnant when eating the mango. The story in the Lakshmi Jagar epic of how Mengan falls pregnant after eating a mango is yet another variation on this all India theme. Now the theme is so common that we even have a myth motive index in the, and as we can see there, myth motive number T511.13.1.3, conception from eating a mango, and this is in Bailey and Thompson's classifications of the oral tales of India. As far as I know, it'd be an interesting thing to look at. I'm pretty sure it's only in India. But the interesting thing here is that we can see it comes from Kashmir, Himalaya, and Punjab, but most of the references, and this was some years ago, come from central India. So central India, of course, is once again the centre of the mythical world of India. I'm joking, but hopefully you believe me after the end of this. It's about a small step to draw the conclusion that mango as a symbol invites comparison with semen, the seed of men, and that the union of the two objects symbolises paternity as a value. But where is the likeness that unites the two objects? One possible answer is given by Elwin, who reports that the Gardaba and Gon stories associate the mango fruit with the human testicle and the seed it somewhat resembles. And so this metonymical figure of speech is one of many associations can be made. And it's obvious that if childless women fall pregnant after eating Shiva's mango, and then the symbol of Shiva's seed in particular, so it becomes a Shiva, the mythical symbol of Shiva's seed in particular, and male semen in general. So in terms of that, my symbolic object, so you have Shiva as the giver, the mango, its opposite, so its likeness, so to speak, and the consumption of the mango is pregnancy. And of course, in many languages, as Levi-Strauss points out, consumption is another way of talking about sexual activity. And I think in French, not sure about German, in English we talk about the consummation of a wedding, which was consumption. So in many cultures, to consume is to, you can work it out yourself. The story of the mango in the Lakshmi Jagar epic then is an allegory of the sexual act, and it tells us the story of this relationship by creating the maximum possible distance in space and time between Shiva as giver and Mangan as receiver. This roundabout tale of the mango in Lakshmi epic is a classic example of an allegory in the sense as one designed to conceal a morally problematic relationship between Shiva and Lakshmi's mother. The mango's value as a religious object in Bastar is manifested in the rituals that must be performed before a mango is consumed. So there are two rituals. One, when a tree is first planted, it must be wedded. It's got to have a wedding, which goes on for days. And then every year, there has to be a first fruits ritual called Amab Jongani. The mango wedding must be performed when a newly planted tree fruits for the first time. Thereafter, the mango auspiciousness ritual must be performed every year at mango harvest time, which is around about March or April. Both rituals fall under the general heading of first fruit rituals, and as I said, must be performed before the newly matured fruit is eaten. The mango wedding is a big event, and it is hosted by the owner. Mango trees too are planted in public places, and it's considered to be the highest meritorious act of a king. Kings often established groves for public consumption as a symbol of their prestige and status. The kings that the Guru Mahas sing about in the Lakshmi Jagar epic do this again to receive renown. As in the myth, so in reality, the main highway that bisects the Bastar Plateau is lined with mango trees that the previous Maharaja planted in the 1930s. But, alas, with BJP, neoliberalism development, roads are being widened and all of these trees a lot of them are being cut down. Now, the well-to-do also plant trees. And as Guru Mahas Sukdai told me in an interview, after the mango tree, the wedding tree grows and becomes very big. After this, people ask, whose mango is it? It is the one who planted the mango dies, and he is remembered, and people say it's so-and-so's mango tree. So it's a remembrance. And another reason for performing a mango wedding is that the fruit of the tree that is not married is considered to be upka pila, an illegitimate child. It is inauspicious and impure and can cause illness to those who don't eat it. So it's really a sacred object. The annual mango auspiciousness ritual is a relatively small affair where the first fruits are offered to the deity and the people eat the leftovers. Guru Maya gave me the following account of one of these rituals. This ritual happens on a Saturday or Monday or Tuesday. Again, auspiciousness and time. The timing is always crucial because in all of these events that relate to mango, time is crucial, also the auspicious day. And if there's one value that epitomises Lakshmi, it's auspiciousness, which is why you need an astrologer. Brothers gather and the mango is cut. Chickens are sacrificed. Goats are sacrificed. They will offer coconuts and incense. They will light a lamp and make puja in the temple. This will create an aroma. They will offer wine. After the mango is cut, they will put it in the deity's place. They break open a coconut. They place a piece of mango and a coconut on the altar. They cut up the rest and distribute and eat it. They say that the mango has been auspicious today and they drink lots of wine. And as we'll see next week, people are really into rituals because a lot of drinking and fun making, as well as the ritual aspects. Whatever they cook, they put a piece of mango with it. At the mango cutting worship, they worship the seven sisters and Dula Dev, the bridegroom deity. So we can see here again that it's always established with the male. It is clear then that just as the life cycle of a rice plant provides the poets of Bastar with a vehicle to sing imaginatively about the life cycle of the ideal daughter goddess, so the life cycle of the mango tree provides them with a symbol to sing imaginatively about the life cycle of the ideal male. Just as the birth and maturity of girls and boys must be marked ritually, so the life cycle of rice and mango trees must be marked by analogous symbols. So you've got to have these actual weddings and symbolic weddings. So weddings in Bastar then are first and foremost initiation rituals, puberty rituals, where the groom is a spouse is an optional extra. And so people talk, and in this mango wedding, there's only one symbol, and so we've got to understand it then as an initiation ritual, or if you like, a puberty ritual. The fact that rice is an annual crop and the mango tree is a perennial tree gives the performance of these different rituals a different periodicity. The Lakshmi Jagar epic brings these beliefs about rice and mango together by means of the story of water. They both need water to survive, but in different ways. Rice emerges from water and lives in it for the first part of its life. But when it reaches maturity, it no longer needs water. In fact, it's got to be dried. It is but a small step for the poets to conceive of water as the mother of rice. The mango tree, on the other hand, emerges from dry land but requires a regular supply of water. It is then but a small step for the poets to conceive of water as the wife or sexual partner of the mango. As we shall see, the logic of Halberg kinship requires that Shiva's role as Lakshmi's father be hidden. It follows that the water must be personified as his secret mistress, and the mango then as a publicly acknowledged tale. And one of the ways they do this in Bastar is by this notion of parallelism. Oral epics the world over, from the Hebrew Bible to Eastern Indonesia, employ what's called parallelism. And what this refers to is one line of poetry is repeated in a subsequent line by the use of identity, antithesis, or synthesis. And here are a number of key lines from the epic, the Tale of Rice. The mango tree has fruited. Oh beloved, the mango tree has fruited. So here, basically identical, fruited. How can we eat the mango, oh beloved? How can we drink the water? So eating and drinking, closely associated. Mango and water are more of a complementary opposite. Assemble the things, O beloved. Assemble the things, identical. I will perform the mango wedding, O beloved. I will perform the pond wedding. So here wedding is bringing together, and the suggestions being made that one is the spouse and one is the... this is just one line of 31,000. We then eat the mango and then we can drink the water. It can be seen that line 2 is a simple repetition of line 1, save from the omissions of the words, O beloved. As each line consists of 10 beats, this omission takes a form of a sonic beat of 2 beats, a musical feature found in many of the parallel lines. Lines 3 and 4 illustrate the use of similitude and opposition. Eating and drinking are alike in that they are a form of consumption, but mangoes, a solid is the opposite of water, a fluid. As such, the mango must be eaten and the water must be drunk. Lines 5 and 6 are identical kind, and so on. So the allegory of the mango identifies mango as Shiva's seed and the pond as Mengan, the goddess of rain. In other words, the mango is a symbolic groom and the pond is a symbolic bride. But when this ritual is enacted, only one spouse is involved, a branch symbolising the groom. So it's as if this other line, the myth and the ritual then are out. And so in other words, the ritual symbolises the coming of age of the tree as groom, but not its union with water as bride, because this relationship has to be denied in the ritual. The interpretation only occurred to me after my colleague and I had recorded, transcribed and translated the epic, and only then did I notice the allegorical structure. And the allegory inevitably leads to the conclusion that Shiva is the secret father of Lakshmi, a proposition consistent with the comparative evidence from Bengal. It's also consistent with the Sanskritic myths about Shiva that depict him as an erotic ascetic who spreads his seed. This interpretation, I should add, was something of a surprise to the singer, whose reaction was to reject it and to draw attention to the surface structure of the story that identifies Meng as the father of Lakshmi. Now, while the anthropologist must respect the local point of view, we are not bound to accept it. To the contrary, our aim must be to celebrate the local interpretations by placing them in the broader comparative context. Variations on a theme presuppose a general theme, and understanding the dialectical relationship between theme and variations, it seems to me, is the obligation of what our trade is. I now come to the identity of Sita's father. The logic of the myth implies that because Shiva is the father of Lakshmi and because Sita is a reincarnation of Lakshmi, that Shiva is also the father of Sita. As I mentioned in a previous lecture, Guru Mai's story of the birth of Sita is a subaltern variation of the received Brahmanical version. Or, to be more precise, it provides an answer to the question that the received version poses. It is generally agreed that King Janak found Sita in a furrow while ploughing, but the question is, who put her there? Guru Mai says it was Lakshmi. Every month for 9 months, Lakshmi collected her menstrual blood in a clay pot and buried it in a field. This was then discovered by a servant of Janak when ploughing the field. He gave it to Janak, who opened it to find a girl he called Lakshmi. This story is one of many found in Bastar about the rebirth of Lakshmi as a daughter. It also establishes Lakshmi's bloodline, but leaves open the question of the paternity of Sita. This, as I mentioned before, is a subject of much discussion, and there are many variations. Now, a South Indian scholar found one fascinating subaltern variation he collected from an untouchable, quote-unquote, Kannada-speaking bard from South India. The epic opens with Ravana and his queen Ravana, the demon who abducted Sita from Narayan. Ravana is depicted as a demon in the Brahmanical versions, but in this version he's as a god, so you get the classic subaltern versions where the demons become gods. Ravana and his wife are unhappy and childless. Here we go again. Ravana goes to the forest and performs various austerities to win favour of the gods. Shiva notices and appears in the form of a holy mendicant and gives him, guess what, a magic mango, with instructions that he should give it to his wife to eat. But when he brings it home, they perform the ceremonial puja and his wife is very happy. But after the ritual, Ravana thinks, if I give her this fruit, I'll be hungry and she'll be full. So he gobbles it up himself, and giving her only the seed to link. She throws it in the yard and it sprouts and grows into a full mango tree. Meanwhile, King Ravana becomes pregnant. Wonderful story. And he gives birth to Sita. So the argument can be summed up so far. The belief that the consumption of mangoes results in pregnancy for childless women is an all-India belief but the subaltern accounts from Bastar in South India identify the Shiva as owner and giver of the mango. In the Lakshmi Jagar epic, Nengan is the consumer of the mango, which makes her the mother of Lakshmi and Shiva the father. In the other case, Ravana is the consumer of the mango, which makes him the male mother and the father of Sita. And these lead us to the conclusion that, I'll come to the conclusion in a minute, that Shiva is both the father of Lakshmi and of Sita. And we have here the notion of the male mother, which is very familiar, of course, to all Africanists in the journey. The mother's brother in South Africa, from A. Radcliffe Brown. In Southern Africa, the common term for the mother's brother is malumi, which is a compound formed from the stem mother, ma, and the suffix meaning male. So it's a very common image. So the idea that you can have a male mother is not unusual. But this general conclusion then leads to a problem, leads to a fundamental contradiction in the Lakshmi Jagar epic. The fact that the surface structure of the narrative tells one story while the deep structure tells another. And to understand this contradiction, it is necessary to examine the cultural specificity of the Bastar kinship system. I hope I can keep the audience for the next half hour. Kinship can be fascinating, and let's hope I can. Up until this lecture, we've focused on the role of natural history has played in the poetic imagination of the Guru Mars of Bastar. And as I said, we've seen how it divides India east-west into a wet and dry. Cultural history, on the other hand, divides India roughly north-south. The north is the home of the native Indo-Aryan speakers, and the south is the home of the Dravidian speakers. This linguistic opposition correlates, but not exactly, with other cultural oppositions. The most important, from my point of view, is that of kinship. Now, the facts on the ground, Indian kinship is impossibly complicated, but if we take the perspective of an intellectual pilot flying at 30,000 feet, we can see some general points of view. Such was the perspective taken by Troutman, who developed this wonderful map. He's one of those rare scholars of Indian society who are equally at home in the world of Indology, abstract kinship theory, linguistics, and comparative ethnography, as well as ancient history. And the fruits of this extraordinary scholarship on the deep history of Indian kinship is this map on the cultural geography, and I can see some students here who's I've already given this reference to. So the Troutman shows that there are three quite distinct generic kinship systems found in India: an Indo-Aryan system in the north, a Dravidian system in the south, and a frontier zone in the middle. And what defines these three areas is that in the north, what we find in the north, cousin marriage and uncle marriage is forbidden in the north. In central India, cousin marriage is permitted, but uncle marriage is not. But in the south, cousin marriage and uncle marriage is allowed. Now, another way to talk about the distinction, this defines the north in negative terms, and we can express it in positive terms by this notion of kanyadan. In the north, the bride is reckoned to be kanyadan. Kanya means virgin maiden, or virgin, and dan means gift. So the bride is conceived of as a gift, but only in the north, not in the south. And the dan is a very special gift because it must always go in an upward direction. And so, in other words, in the north, we have the Brahmanical values have permeated the kinship systems and created a situation where the receiver of a bride is superior to the giver. And so there's an upward motion, and with that there's an upward movement of dowry, and with that people say dowry is a form of theft because the wife receivers make high demands on the givers. And which is also one of the reasons, to get back to a previous lecture, while women tend to be devalued in the north because the marriage of a daughter, if you have 5 daughters, you're destined for poverty. So it's a big problem. And but in central India, we have marriage with the father's sister's daughter from a male point of view. We have cousin marriage at that time. Here, there's equality between giver and receiver. And for those who know your kinship, marriage this way is met by giving the opposite direction. And so in other words, there's reciprocity. But in Bastar, there is equality between the givers and the receivers. And that equality is enacted out during weddings. It goes on for about 15 minutes when the parents of the bride and groom meet and they touch each other's feet and feed each other and so on. So it's a radical equality. And but we can see in South India, really uncle marriage here, where a woman marries her mother's brother, is a form of up marriage. So we might want to ask whether that is a Brahmanical influence there as well, that is expressed in that way. Now, returning now to the Lakshmi Jagar epic, it comes as no surprise to find that when the Guru Mayas sing about kinship relations between the gods, they use Halbi terms of reference and address in a consistent way. And if one carefully observes the way these terms are used, we find that the main characters are webbed in a complex web of kinship that embodies the moral values of the Halbi-speaking people. The gods do not always behave in virtuous ways, and indeed the manner in which they violate the standards of right conduct gives them, the singers, a means for developing the message. But in Bastar, we have this chart shows, once we look at all these kinship terms, shows the kinship relationships on the so-called surface structure. As can be seen, Vishnu, the younger brother of Shiva, marries... Oh dear. Vishnu marries his father's sister's daughter, which is in accord with the rules. And his older brother is Shiva. And so she is his father's sister's daughter, which is a Kamic marriage. Note too that Mingan's father is Ming, not Shiva. But the allegorical structure tells a different story on 2 counts. First of all, we know as first farmer, Shiva, if he is the first farmer and produces the first rice, and Lakshmi is rice, it follows logically that she must be the daughter of the first farmer. But this has to be denied, and of course the story is told in this roundabout way, because this has to be denied because it would imply that Shiva had a sexual relationship with his auntie, which is absolutely taboo all over India. And but we've seen, for example, the elaborate stories the Guru Mayas tell to maximise the spatial and temporal difference between the giving of Shiva's giving the food and Lakshmi's consumption of it. Wrong marriages are, of course, a fact of life, but in the epic, they're concerned with the bad conduct of the singers, not wrong marriages. Now, if we then go to Bengal, we have the classic situation. So in other words, what is happening in Bengal records the fact that if Shiva is the first farmer, and I said in my second lecture that there is evidence in medieval Bengali texts that Shiva was the first farmer. As the first farmer, the first rice farmer, and Lakshmi then becomes the first rice. And so in West Bengal, it is not only an open secret that Shiva is Lakshmi's father, it's a relationship that is celebrated annually at the time of Durga Puja. And this is expressed, as I said before, in the iconography of her 4 children. But when we then come to Tamil Nadu, we find yet another relationship between the gods. So every time we move, the gods are changing their relationship. And what's interesting, in the Sanskrit version, the gods tend to be unrelated. So it's in the vernacular version where the problem arises. So Sanskrit is an all-India thing, and this is the genius of the Brahmins. I really have to give it to the Brahmins. They don't talk about the relationships in the god, and they all become unrelated. So it's, if you like, the myths that are developed about Lakshmi in India are all developed. They're all problems of translation. People are struggling to translate these all-India epics into local vernacular. So here we find another relationship between the great gods. Here, Shiva is depicted as Vishnu's brother-in-law. So Shiva is Vishnu's brother-in-law, right? And in the Heavenly One, they were elder brother, younger brother. Now, this diagram comes from a famous article by Brenda Beck called the king nucleus of Tamil folklore. And if in her studies of Tamil oral tradition, she found that storytellers placed woman at the centre of things. In this case, or to be more precise, placed woman as daughter, sister and mother at the centre of the kin nucleus. This is illustrated in this chart here, but notice the pride of place goes to Parvati as mother goddess, and also, but not Lakshmi. So the question is, where's Lakshmi in this? But these relationships, she rightly noted, are grounded in the culturally specific kin relationships that prevail in the Dravidian South. Unlike North India, where Shiva and Vishnu are thought to be unrelated, she's talking about the dry West, the Tamil mythology, they are brothers-in-law. The emphasis on bringing Shiva and Vishnu together illustrates the Tamil genius for proceeding order in seemingly disparate material. It is also related to the fact that Tamil-speaking areas is a great stress laid on brother-in-law cooperation and friendship. And this is where it contrasts markedly in the north. So in North Indian kinship, Shiva we call the wife giver Sala. And the best translation for Sala is you bastard. And this is swear word. And he is regarded as low and he is regarded as high. So he's called Jija and Sala, and to be a wife giver is regarded as bad. That expresses the moral values of North Indian kinship, which are totally different to the Tamil Nadu case. and Harman, in his development of Beck's observations, I go on to that, and we see too that Dumont also used this model. This relationship between Vishnu and Parvati is quite literally engraved in stone, and Dumont's affinity as a value expresses that. But where is Lakshmi? It doesn't appear. What's happened to Lakshmi in the south? And so suddenly we've gone from central India, where Lakshmi is central, to the south, where Parvati is central and Lakshmi disappears. And so how does she fit into this king nucleus diagram? And Beck says, and I think she's right here in a way, that Vishnu has no family in the normal sense. It is true he has a wife, but she has become a symbol of wealth and good fortune rather than a symbol of motherhood. Absolutely right, as I've been trying to stress, Lakshmi is the daughter goddess, not a mother goddess. And so the Tamil myths and rituals involving Lakshmi are, for the most part, women's business. But these myths, I've looked at them, don't mention any kinship relation between Lakshmi and Shiva. But what's interesting, if we assume that Vishnu, or that Lakshmi marries, we know that Lakshmi is the daughter of Shiva from North India. If we assume that she marries her mother's brother, which is allowed in South India, we have a logical and cultural possibility that this is the relationship that holds in South India. The problem is there's absolutely no ethnographic evidence to support it. But there's also absolutely no ethnographic evidence to deny it either. And a Tamil playwright who wrote a play depicting the virtues of marriage relationship of this kind would excite no negative emotion, and it would be totally in keeping with Tamil cultural values. But the Bengali playwright who produced a straightforward translation of a play of this kind would cause an outrage. And so the Bengali speakers of North India, the Halbi speakers of South India, and the Tamil speakers of South, we should note, are all located in the wet eastern zone. And it's in these areas where we find these relationships between Lakshmi and the others. But we don't, as we move to the west, we don't find these relationships. And in conclusion, the contradiction I've identified here between the surface structure and the deep structure of the Lakshmi Jagar epic, and the dialectical relationship between the general form of the myth and regional variations, recalls Levi-Strauss's argument, and I quote, "The purpose of a myth is to provide a logical model capable of overcoming a contradiction." And this is a wonderful example of his thesis. Levi-Strauss's concern was to make an argument about the cognitive values of the human mind, and to show that people whose mode of production has not alienated them from nature employ what he calls a logic of concrete quality, where the relations between the relations become important. And we might say that is structuralism, we pull it apart and we've got destructure, deconstruction. So Levi-Strauss has been deconstructed. And so the logic of concrete quality, as he called it, is grounded in careful observations of the life of plants and animals of other aspects of nature. So the Lakshmi Jagar epic is a classic illustration of his argument, but it is much more as well. The poetic imagination of people is not always an unconscious process independent of the will of people. And I think that example of the untouchable who said that Ravana was the king is a deliberate strategy. So people everywhere are located socially in place and time. As Jensen rightly notes, their thoughts and morality are shaped by cultural history and cultural geography. Myths and rituals use symbolic objects to give expressions to values people hold as members of society. Once we accept, as Mauss reminds us, that the morality of the court is not the morality of the subaltern, that the morality of woman is not the morality of men, and that the morality of the young is not the morality of the old, we are led to Ranajit Guha's argument that many of myth is a figure of some ancient and unresolved antagonism. Antagonism between kin of different kind is a preoccupation of the singers of the Lakshmi Jagar epic. The antagonism between the jealous co-wives and Lakshmi, the antagonism between jealous husbands, the antagonism between the love parents over their daughters and the need to surrender to the demands of the suitor who wishes to abduct them in marriage, and so on for many other problems in the practice of the art of trying to live together well. Rumination on the messages of epics like Lakshmi Jagar enable its listeners to contemplate this difficult art of trying to live together well. What is special about the Lakshmi Jagar epic is it does not give a list of commandments. As such, it stands opposed to an Orissa version of the Lakshmi epic written in the 15th century by Balaram Das. What we can be certain about this epic is that the author was a man, because in the introduction he addresses Lakshmi and says, "You are my mother and I am your son." But even without this clue, the rhetoric of the text leaves no doubt as to its patriarchal origins. The text is distinguished by its ethical appeal and is addressed primarily to women. What distinguishes the text rhetorically is that it develops an argument and tries to convince the reader that the problems of the world are due to the misbehaviour of women. For example, the introduction gives a paragraph which reads, "Nowadays women don't know what religion is. They are left worshipping you and have adopted the path of sin. They have followed their own rules and regulations. They forget service to the father-in-law and mother-in-law. They always speak to their husbands in a domineering way. This is why they have been suffering from sorrows all the time. Nowadays there are many characterless women living in the world who have spoiled all the religious work. So in order to change their minds, I have sought to write this mythology in poetic form. This will be known as a Lakshmi Purana, and you, Mother Lakshmi, will feel happy and give them wealth." Now, so the evidence presented in this form of stories is a blunt list of do's and don'ts. It's didactic. The bad woman eats food without brushing her teeth, enters the kitchen without cleaning her feet, and is always quarrelling, and so on and so on and so on. The allegory in Lakshmi Jagar, by contrast, admits of many interpretations. It is completely non-dogmatic, and it admits of, and I've identified here a contradiction between the surface structure and the deep structure, but this is just one of the many overtones of meaning that sacred poetry of this kind admits. And I think herein lies its magic and wonder. Unlike the scientific quest for abstract precision and clear, logical, unambiguous argument, these concrete symbols of this kind, like the lotus, the rice plant, the mangoes, make for endless interpretation. Lakshmi Jagar does not provide women with rules that must be followed. The values it expresses are more in the nature of instruments to be used creatively in the difficult art of trying to live together well. It provides food for a reflective contemplation as women pursue wealth and happiness in a world that has too much poverty and misery. Thank you.